So everybody saw the disturbing images from yesterday. If you haven't seen it yet, there was a viral clip of Capitol Police opening the doors for the insurrectionists, sometimes filled with white supremacists, all Trump supporters who broke glass and invaded the United States Capitol, desecrated the Congress members' offices, including Nancy Pelosi's. It was a violent scene. One woman has died, a Trump supporter, and 3 others by gunfire, presumably by police, we believe right now, and 3 others died
there's
from other
video
medical
of that.
issues. Yeah, I just was trying to be as precise as possible. So yeah, by the hands of police there. The Capitol Police were entirely unprepared. There were some instances where they did resist and did try to hold this mob back, these terrorists back. But there was a video that showed them letting them in. And Joe Scarborough, an unlikely ally here, responded to this on MSNBC. So just so you know how severe this is the reaction from Joe Scarborough.
If these insurrectionists were black, they would have been shot in the face. And my God, if these insurrectionists were Muslim, they would have been sniped from the top of buildings. So I want to know from the Capitol Hill Police, what is it? Is it just white people? Or is it Donald Trump supporters? Why do you scream at people for walking across the street 3 blocks away from the Capitol? Why are you known as badasses around the Capitol? But then Trump supporters come in and you open the fucking doors for them. Oh my God. You open the doors for them and let them breach the people's house. What is wrong with you?
Okay, so there's a lot to discuss there. Partly why Scarborough is behaving like that is because, yes, he was a former member of Congress, and they lionize and they romanticize the institutions of the United States. But the other part of that's the most cynical interpretation of that. But the other part of that is that it's that fucking outrageous, what we just saw yesterday, that is a moment in history that I was surreally witnessing on the show and like couldn't stop thinking about. And I don't know if you guys feel the same way. Like, as much as I'm a cynical person about our government, seeing these wannabe terrorists, and in some instances, I don't know if the pipe bomber was involved here and was in the Capitol, right? Or if there were multiple, but just posing and like desecrating and vandalizing the Capitol building, it was a visceral image.
Well,
and Scarborough responds in kind.
The thing that I think is important to remember is we left air yesterday not knowing. I mean, they could have killed. Those were armed people getting into the Congress building, and like the person, if people have the stomach for it, the shooting of the woman who was trying to break through a door is pretty amazing footage. And I don't know if you make that call, but the guy is sitting there around a corner, and you can see the gun pointing out. And the second the woman comes through a barrier where there's probably like Congress people barricaded behind their doors. I mean, that's what was going on yesterday, and I think it's pretty gross. Michael Tracy being foremost among the fucking idiots that are minimizing this to an absurd degree. I understand that you can applaud restraint, and like I don't think they should have just shot them in the face like Scarborough says there. But this was a horrific, like the possibilities here were horrific. Like those guys had guns. They had to scramble downstairs. We didn't hear from certain members of Congress for a long time. And I mean, it could like that one woman getting a shot. What happens if somebody behind her among the Trump people takes out his piece? Right? All of a sudden you have a major gunfight in Congress.
What happens if they get in contact with Ilhan Omar or Ocasio-Cortez?
Exactly. They got in Pelosi's office. And so they had a noose outside. So like I think the people that are saying like I would put Michael Tracy as the cartoon for this, but I think there's a lot of people frankly that are flirting with it. But what happened yesterday was fucking appalling. And like I agree that they shouldn't have been like massacred. And like in the situation where you are outmanned, retreating is probably the best case scenario. At the same time, there needs to be mass arrests for these people because this absolutely cannot be tolerated.
Right, but here's the thing. I think so many people are paying attention to, and it's good they are because they obviously are responsible. The Trump supporters who stormed and broke into the Capitol, but there really isn't. Scarborough did it on MSNBC, but overall, I'm not hearing that much about the police. And the fact of the matter is that this wasn't. I know this event was planned for a long time in terms of a rally and a mass group of Trump supporters all heading down to D.C. And in an effort to do
encouraged by
something.
Trump himself. He spoke and said, "I'm going to walk with you," and then he got in his limo and he went and hid in the White House. But that after sparking this,
absolutely. So the police knew about all this. The police knew about all of this, but at the same time, there was no real organized effort down there between the Trump supporters to actually do anything. They didn't know what they were doing. This happened because the police let it happen. Now, whether that was done on purpose or whether it was just purely the police not being prepared, either way, it was unacceptable for that to happen. I mean, we've seen that the police could get their act together when it comes to Black Lives Matter. Again, like you guys said, like Scarborough says, and when it comes to left-wing activists, they somehow know how to manage that and make sure that they get arrested for just marching down a street. But when it came to this moment, there were multiple videos out there, and I think we have one of them that's the most eye-opening, of just a little fenced barricade and maybe a dozen cops at most at one checkpoint to stop a gaggle of hundreds of Trump supporters marching to the Capitol. I mean, I don't know how that happens when they've been talking about this online for months, when Trump has been saying he wanted this to happen for months. Trump specifically on Monday at the Georgia rally said that he hopes Pence overturns the election and it's going to happen January 6th. And if he doesn't, there's going to be problems. And then on the
they have MAGA Civil War sweatshirts made up with the date on them.
Yeah, let's watch the clip Matt referenced, and then Jamie, I want you to weigh in.
Thank you.
Police are squabbling with protesters. Oh, there we go. And they just reached the Capitol again.
Now I just want to point out, actually, because the reporter who took that TikTok video has come out and pushed back on the fact that the narrative around that video is the police let them through. And he said it wasn't the police that moved the barricades, it was the Trump supporters. But I think the reporter is actually missing the point there. If you watch the video, you do say it's the Trump supporters who moved the barricade. And which follows is that the police literally go, "Oh, well, guess that's all we can do." And they start walking alongside the Trump supporters, just giving up, not even stopping them. You could see, actually, if you could replay that video, if you look very closely, there's a Trump supporter that goes over to one of the cops there and gives him a big old hug for letting them through. I don't know if you caught it the first time, but you can see it here if you watch and pay attention, right in the middle.
Police are squabbling with protesters. Oh, there we go.
Right there. You can see the cop drop something, has to pick it up after he gets hugged.
Now, I just want to say quick before you guys opine, regardless of like the circumstances around this clip, say for instance there's another clip going around saying it was the real start of it, which was more contentious, and let's say that was another area on the perimeter that had been breached elsewhere, and they were just like, all right, fine guys, we're going to let this perimeter go. That could be a solution for what happening, but the imagery is clear, right? Like absolute like retreat by the Capitol Police, and whether it's under-preparement. I mean, if I was a Capitol Police officer, I would be wondering which of my colleagues had some sort of inside info or were a bit lax in holding the perimeter, because like that's the type of thing that'd be going through my mind, particularly ahead of the inauguration.
Yeah. So there was a funny tweet that went viral. I don't know if you guys saw someone basically saying, "Why is everyone asking where the cops are? Do you ask where Miley Cyrus is when Hannah Montana's on stage?" Which, you know, for you guys who don't know, though, they're the same person.
They're the same person. Yeah. Come on. Disney Channel.
I thought that was a very, very astute observation, because these guys, you know, they might be fighting the cops a little bit because the cops do have to do their job to some degree, but, you know, they're pals, they're bootlickers. Like I almost feel bad for them because they feel so betrayed by their beloved, boys in blue, their beloved, their pig friends. But
the head of the NYPD tweeted the NYPD would never let this happen, and I saw someone replied and said, "Well, a lot of the off-duty ones are there right now." Like,
shit.
There's no factual basis. We don't know, but like the talking about white supremacy independent of policing is fiction. It's fantasy at this point. There is a clear connection, and it's never been starker than the images of Black Lives Matter protests at the Capitol and the preparedness of cops when none of them did anything remotely close to what we saw yesterday. Can you imagine? I mean, like what Scarborough said there is on point. I can't believe that's coming out of my mouth.
Yeah.
They would kill the Black Lives Matter protesters and they'd snipe Muslims they'd blow them up. They don't care.
Oh, absolutely. And if it were communists, we would be probably killed before we even got there, which is why we haven't, one of many reasons why we haven't tried that yet. But what I was going to say was, I think it's
Storm the Capitol, Jamie. Storm the Capitol.
I think it's really important. I mean, look, from your mouth to God's ears, honey. We ain't there yet. I think it's really important to look at this from an abolitionist angle, right? Because I do think a lot of these people are acting in good faith when they point out, oh, if it were Black Lives Matter protesters, they would be really, really tear gassing them and getting them under control. Like it's not okay when the cops do that to anybody.
Yeah.
And I worry that this will set a precedent and provide an excuse for a beefing up of the bipartisan security state that will come down primarily on the left and primarily on people of color fighting for their rights, right? Like, it's very easy for me to draw a straight line from this to, increase funding for the police budgets, increase funding for security in all different areas. So that really does concern me about this. But I don't know if there's a reason I'm not like as upset as the rest of you right now. I think it's because I'm just used to being upset about this stuff, and it's kind of I kind of alternate between being actively upset about it and being sort of detached and trying to take the long view on it, or a thing that Sean and Matt call the 1,000-year stare. Like I think it's most important to understand what's happening and place it in its proper framework as a result of many processes of economic crisis, of structural white supremacy, and maybe use it as an opening at least to talk about the ways that we could resolve this crisis and the ways that we can...
And a cult of personality that we've allowed to take over the United States and a significant portion of the population, aided and abetted and pushed forward by the Republican Party because they felt it was in their immediate electoral and financial interests.
Absolutely. Yeah. But I think it is a good chance for the organized left to seize upon the moment and use it to make the case for the only thing, the prerequisite to defeating fascism for real is defeating capitalism. And if you believe in democracy, we need to be fighting on all fronts for economic democracy, for democracy at the ballot box. And the DSA actually had a very good tweet to that effect saying, if you want to fight against fascism and for democracy, you need to join a leftist organization because we have a lot of work to do.
Yeah, and Jamie's not saying this, but I think other people like that this is rural America waking up. As somebody who was born to non-college educated parents and from North Dakota, I just want to say it really pisses me off when people can't understand the difference between just frothing at the mouth reactionaries and working people from the Midwest. Yeah. So maybe let's not do that.
Oh, absolutely.
The funny thing is there was a clip going around of a director of human resources at an insurance company inside the Capitol that it was going because he posted a video of himself storming the Capitol. And this is like a lawyer, like an educated lawyer who's an executive of an insurance company. Like that's who stormed the Capitol. It's those those types.
There's videos of them
There's
hanging out in
video.
hotels.
There's a video. This guy is literally saying, "We're the small business owners," right? Like a lot of words have been spilled trying to analyze and determine the class character of this quote unquote movement.
But
there
that's why
it is.
I don't. But that's why I I hear what you were saying, Jamie, about it being about class, and the overall Trump movement is completely interconnected with class. But these specific people, like they're
But
middle.
don't misunderstand, Emma. Like I think like this is where people misunderstand this all the time. It's not that they're deprived; it's that they've been empowered by the class system. So that's why you need to attack. It's not because they you need to give them $2,000 so they stay home. It's that this class of people has been there since literally at least Bacon's Rebellion earlier. This is the let's take Indian lands trader type guys.
Mm-hmm.
This is who that is. And
they're fighting for their class interests as small business owners, which they do perceive, and in some cases correctly, to align with Trump's program, because we are in a time of economic crisis. They are not financially deprived, but they are anxious about becoming proletarianized, becoming workers, because when a capitalist fails in this country, they become a worker, right? You can either exploit people or you can be exploited. Those are the two choices. So it makes sense that they would stand in favor of economic nationalism and against things like, a $15 minimum wage, single payer healthcare, things that empower workers, right? They're looking forward to a future where they remain exploiters and small business owners. And as such, they identify more with Trump's economic program than anything to the left of him.